I'm talking about parents who have disregarded their thoughts, opinions, values, beliefs, who have not respected their parenting decisions, who are being too overbearing despite the fact that your kid is saying back off. Parents who give too many opinions to the point that your child feels chronically judged, and for any of you that you know you've crossed a boundary, I'm telling you. Hey there, welcome back to the Mind Your Boundaries podcast, episode number 19. I'm your host and boundary enthusiast, Jessica Miller, and today we're diving back into the conversation of adult-child estrangement. 2 days ago, I was taking a long walk with my son, and I was reminded of a comment from someone in our audience that was trying to tell me and encourage me to take back my advice, where I encourage parents to continue to reach out to their estranged child. Now, if you remember in episode 10, when we first started talking about this, I briefly went over my simple 3-step reunification process. I shared that if this was me, in order for me to get my child to crack the door and be willing to meet for a meeting, I would reach out every 7 to 10 days and send "I'm thinking of you" texts, and then every 4 to 6 weeks, I would send a direct ask to meet. And then in episode 12, I opened up and shared with you our estrangement story for when my husband estranged from my in-laws for 2 years. And I doubled down on the fact that I would go against conventional wisdom, I would go against the leading expert Joshua Coleman, and I would continue to reach out to my son if he estranged from me. Now, this isn't defiance without cause. It's born from a profound understanding of knowing who my children are, knowing who I am as a mom, my personal experience of estrangement, plus my clinical practice work of 10 years. So today, I thought it'd be more helpful to gain more clarity about adult-child estrangement, which subgroups are leading America's silent epidemic. We're going to dissect that criticism. We're going to talk directly to and answer parental hesitations. We're also going to explore the way that we parent can influence the way that we reconnect and heal. And of course, the intricacies of in-law relationships. All of this through my subjective lens. I'm really going to talk about that a lot today because I believe any type of information you get, whether it's through a YouTube video, a podcast, a book, a seminar, a boundary enthusiast like myself, you need to know that this is subjective. Like, I'm telling you, this is my framework based on my lived experience. And when I give you a framework, it's malleable, right? You get to then shape it. And then through your discerning filter, you get to then apply it to your family dynamics. It's all subjective. So buckle up as we dive deep into understanding, persistence, and the power of love in the silence of estrangement. I want to be clear, we are not talking about kids who have estranged from their parents from extreme situations, like any form of clinical abuse. We're not talking about those kids. We understand why you estranged. I also want to make sure if you are a parent and you have been estranged from your adult child and maybe your grandkids as some form of punishment because maybe your adult child struggles from untreated mental illness or something you just don't know, but you would say that their behavior towards you is abusive in some way, this discussion is also not for you. We have 2 children, Allie and James, but in this episode, I'm going to focus on our son, James. Just like you, I know my son's heart. I know his essence. I know his perspective. I know his values. I know his needs. And I have had the pure honor and pleasure of getting to know this through our countless mornings where we would take a 3-mile walk before he would even go to elementary school. Because of all these talks, he really has just a really strong identity. And what I realized very early on, I think my kids were around 3 years old, the days went smoother if they felt like they had a choice in anything. And so when they were really young, I went to Walmart, got a piece of tag board, and I made a choice board. And they would choose what shirt color they wanted. They would choose what they wanted for lunch. They would choose which book we read at night or for nap time. They would choose which park we went to. As long as they could have choice, our day was just so much better. And what I didn't realize was in doing that, I was creating individuation and autonomy. And James, let me tell you, he is a skilled boundary communicator. You know, us moms, we can tell when something's wrong with our kids. He's 14 now, so the roller coaster of hormones has begun. And if he is down and not his chipper, exuberant self, I will go to his room and, of course, I'm expecting our robust talks that we used to have in the morning, but he's a little bit more like closed off because he's a teenager now. But I'll sit on his bed and he'll say, Mom, I'm not going to talk about my feelings. So if you're up here for that, you might as well leave, but you can sit here and watch me play my video game. And so right away, he's letting me know my boundary is I'm not going to talk, but you can certainly like be in my presence with me. And so that just means, okay, I'm going to support you by just sitting in silence. When he and I disagree, I don't try to like jam my perspective down his throat. I just step back and I model for him. That's okay. Two different ideas can exist at the same time. Obviously, if it goes outside of the bounds of parenting, it's a different story. But in terms of just having individual thoughts, I just show him like, yeah, like you can think that. I totally respect and I can see how you would think that. And this is how your mom sees it. We can both see it, and then he'll be like, oh yeah, I can see how you would see it that way too. So because I know how I have parented my kids, I have encouraged autonomy. I have instilled a very strong sense of self. They can communicate their boundaries. They know I model for them how to respect boundaries. I stand here as a mom. If my child estranged from me, I would never stop reaching out. With a couple caveats. If my son developed an addiction, mental illness, or he blatantly said, stop reaching out, you're crossing my boundary, I would obviously reassess. But as I stand here today, 2024, knowing the leading causes of estrangement, knowing how I have parented and raised him, knowing his heart, sitting with clients on my couch and hearing directly from them telling me I want my parents to reach out, that is my stance. Estrangement wears many masks. It can be a difference of opinions, conflicting values, addiction, mental illness, helicopter parenting, and dare I say, the subtle yet very significant influence of an in-law. The in-law dynamic is the wild card outside of addiction and mental illness. Like, we just don't know how our future daughter-in-law or how our daughter-in-law is going to interpret us. Our actions, our support, our love, we have no clue. And so if estrangement happened, and I truly believed, the in-law had something to do with it, I would take a step back, self-reflect, and then show up consistently, which means I would reach out every 7 to 10 days, thinking about you. And every month and a half, a gentle reminder, I'm ready to talk whenever you are, your terms, just say the time and place and I'll be there. This isn't about intrusion. This is reaffirming my role as the parent. A role that doesn't end when my child turns 18, moves out, or partners with someone who sees the world through a different lens than I do. The in-law truly is the wild card. I just have no idea how my in-law is going to interpret my relationship with my son, but I can only show up as the mom James knows I am consistently, and the mother-in-law she has come to know me as. A voice in our audience suggested that I take back my advice, that if I suggest parents keep reaching out to their estranged child, that I am perpetuating a pattern akin to a childlike reliance. And I gave her comment some thought because it really stuck with me. Like, I wonder what she's thinking about. Like, I wonder her frame of reference, right? So I really thought about her comment, and I find it anchored in a misunderstanding of what being a parent is. There is a nuanced difference between smothering and showing care. For instance, there are things that we do, maybe they're old-fashioned, that are simply expressions of love. Calling my mom when I make it home safe after I leave her house, letting her know I don't feel good, and when I feel better, giving her health updates. And I allow my mom to be the mom and myself to be the child because that's reality. I am her kid, no matter how old I get. Maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe I don't understand because I have never felt the need for my parents to see me as an adult. So this led me down another rabbit hole, because if a child is so concerned about a parent still seeing them as a child, maybe they have never had the opportunity to be seen as an adult and they still need that space to individuate. Reflecting on my own experience, I recognize the comfort in allowing my mom to express her love to me in these ways, much like her father did well into his golden years. It's just about finding the balance where autonomy isn't stifled by affection. But this begs to question, why does the idea of parental outreach cause such discomfort? Is it the shadow of overbearing care, or is it the echo of time where autonomy wasn't fostered? Let's peel back the layers and truly examine this thought process before we dismiss the act of reaching out as something that perpetuates a maladaptive behavioral pattern. Backing up a little bit, my mom and her dad were so cute. So when she would go and visit him in Montana and she would go out with her friends, he's over 100 years old and would make sure the porch light was on for her and everything was set up so she could smoothly get into the house, just like he would do when she was a kid or a teenager. And I just remember her always telling me like, oh, it just makes me feel so loved and taken care of. I mean, this was when she was like 78 years old. When I say reach out and continue to reach out to your child until they're willing to crack the door and have the meeting, I'm talking directly to parents that have hurt their child. This is outside of abuse. We've already talked about that. I'm talking about parents who have disregarded their thoughts, opinions, values, beliefs, who have not respected their parenting decisions, who are being too overbearing despite the fact that your kid is saying back off. Parents who give too many opinions to the point that your child feels chronically judged or their voice is just silenced. And for any of you that you know you've crossed a boundary, I'm telling you, reach out and continue to reach out until they feel comfortable enough to crack the door and have the meeting. So looking at that concerning comment, wanting me to change my advice because it perpetuates a childlike reliance, I wonder if it comes from a place of needing space themselves. Like maybe they requested it and it was denied. Maybe they never felt like they had a voice in their family that really mattered. And now they're taking a stand, they're putting up a big tall fortress because they can. They finally have a choice. I have heard from so many of you since episode 10 and episode 12 offering me up your scenario, like this is my unique situation. Would you still reach out every 7 to 10 days to see if I can get that door to crack? So when I say I would not stop reaching out, I'm doing that from a place of conviction. I know I didn't overmother. I know I didn't overparent. I know I gave space. So some of the leading causes of estrangement are not a concern for me. However, it could be a concern for you. And if that's the case, I'm going to touch on that in just a moment. And now we're going to talk about reasons why you might hesitate as a parent, fearing that if you pester your child, they're going to pull away further. I get it. And so what I'm going to ask you to do as I read off these different scenarios of perhaps this is why you're hesitating, I really want you to remember, again, my framework that I'm feeding you, the 3-step method in episodes 10, and I dive deeper into it in episode 12, those 3 steps, I really want you to remember you have to alter that based on your subjective reality, based on your family dynamics. Hesitation to reach out can be a mirror reflecting back to you some past mistakes, some things that you wished you could have done differently, or some internal struggles that we have with ourselves. Perhaps you're holding back and you're not reaching out to your son or daughter that's estranged because you feel like I didn't give them any room to individuate. Maybe choice wasn't offered enough and now you're witnessing the repercussions. Or maybe you loved your children fiercely, but not the way they needed to be loved. Think of an introvert. My daughter's an introvert. I am an extrovert. I am all over touching, loving, like just so much. My daughter can't stand that. And if I continuously did that, do you think she would have a relationship with me once she could leave the house? God, no. So as soon as I realized, oh, she really doesn't like that. Like she really doesn't like me hugging her as many times. Like I read a statistic one time, it said, touch your kids 7 times a day and they feel like grounded and loved from home. And I'm like, okay, she didn't like that. So as parents, you know, we have to adjust the way we love our kids based on their personality. And so maybe you weren't aware of that, and so you just loved your kids all the same with all of your heart, but it wasn't what they needed. Brenda absolutely loved being a mom. She quit her job, poured everything into her son. Sure, sometimes he asked her to back off, give him some space, but she couldn't. He was her everything, and if he wasn't happy, she felt like she failed. And when the phones went quiet and the door slammed shut, she freaked out. She panicked. She didn't know what to do. She knew she couldn't call him. She knew she couldn't reach out because that's what led to this in the first place. And so she did the next best thing. She took a step back, reflected, and she realized, okay, he's been telling me this all along. And I couldn't listen because I needed him in my life. Like I didn't have anything else. So she got herself into therapy. She went into therapy 3 months. And then when she felt she was ready, she reached out to her son and she said, I have been working on this. This is my new perspective. And I really would love for you to join me for a session. Her son declined. He didn't want to go to therapy with her. However, he did say, I would be open to going to grab a cup of coffee with you sometime. Maybe you let your anxious thoughts exert too much control. Like maybe that's how you manage your internal chaos, by controlling your external world. And now they have something to say about it. Maybe your workaholic tendencies foreshadowed emotional connections. Perhaps your child went off to college and then came back and is sitting around the Thanksgiving table with some wacky ideas, some shift in values, beliefs that you never thought you would hear just spewing from their mouth. And you're just like, how is this my child? And you just can't reconcile. Perhaps your kids are raising their own babies and the way that they're parenting is so different than the way you did. You just can't even get on board. Divorces too, they leave their mark. They can be messy. One parent can over-rely on a kid or children. They can badmouth the other parent. All of this in different ways can come back and just bite us. And if you're the parent whose career took center stage and the emotional closeness was just kind of like pushed aside, things probably feel strained right now. These are not hypotheticals. These are real life scenarios that have led to estrangement. It's not just about reaching out. Listen to me very closely. It's about understanding and confronting the reason for the distance. It's about introspection. I keep saying that. You got to step back, ask yourself, what have I done to contribute to this? It's about acknowledging, maybe, just maybe, I could have done things differently. I know I have. I have not. I know I've told you some good things I did as a parent, a lot of it by accident, but I also know, there's so many things I would go back and do differently. So many. We're all just doing the very best we can, but maybe you get to the place where you're humble enough to say, I definitely could have done some things different. And then this realization gives us the opportunity to initiate change, to extend a hand, not from a place of expectation, but from a genuine desire to understand them and love them and be present in their life. The quiet that follows a child's estrangement is often filled with unspoken words and enough tears to fill a 5-gallon bucket. When a child pulls away, the silence is so overwhelming, but I encourage you, do not curl up in a ball and get into the fetal position and just cry yourself to sleep. Take this as an opportunity to take a step back, and this is a time for healing and growth. Honestly, what led to this moment of estrangement has probably been lurking in the backdrop of your relationship for years, in some cases decades. And now it's ready to be worked on, so that once you reunite, you have more respect, more love, and you're going to have a better relationship. Some of you listening, and you're hearing me say, reach out every 7 to 10 days, and you're really frustrated right now because you're like, I'm blocked on everything. Maybe you are. Maybe you've called and you actually know you're blocked on the phone. You know for sure if you're blocked on social media, but maybe you've called and you know it doesn't work. I'm blocked. If that's the case, snail mail. However, I will tell you this again. I have sat with adult kids and they've complained about their parents reaching out and all the context of their texts, but they don't block them. They don't block the parent. They just complain about it. And I have sat with kids right here who tell me directly and who speak directly to the parent, it is your job to fix this. And you may have a different experience, and I trust that you do. And if this was me, again, from a mom, if I was blocked, then I would snail mail it. I would snail mail letters. I would snail mail cards. I would snail mail thinking of you stuff. I don't see this as a burden. I see this as a responsibility for being a parent. It's just me saying, I'm here, I've reflected, and I'm ready whenever you are. Me saying I would reach out to my son in attempts to get him to crack the door open isn't just plucked out of thin air. It's from lived experience. The pure devastation that would drape over my husband's shoulders on the weeks that my mother-in-law wouldn't send him I'm thinking of you text, that told me a lot. This reinforces my perspective that as a child, if we feel we are wronged or hurt by the parent, we believe it's up to them to fix it. Reaching out to your estranged child is not enforcing dependency. You are reaffirming commitment. It's not unlike the parental check-in when your child stomps off upset to their bedroom. A gentle knock, that presence outside the door. It's a comfort. It's an option for your child to engage or remain silent. And when we offer the choice, we honor autonomy. You're saying, I'm here, I'm respecting your freedom of choice. I'll just be right here waiting whenever you're ready to talk. Now let's talk about the factor that we have very little control over, in-laws. So outside of addiction and mental illness, this is the one where we really our control dims. This dynamic relationship has tons of pitfalls where well-intentioned actions can be misconstrued and relationships can teeter on misunderstandings. I know despite my best efforts, I cannot predict if my daughter-in-law will be threatened by me or embrace me. I just don't know. I can extend love in the way that I believe she wants to receive it. I can support her in all the things she wants to or allows me to support her in. Yet, there is a valid fear where she might feel overshadowed or threatened by my awesome relationship with my son. That's just a fact. And if she feels threatened, she might begin to chip away at the foundation of the relationship I built with my child. My awareness of human behavior, the patterns etched in from childhood, and the fundamental needs that all humans have gives me the confidence that as soon as I meet my future daughter-in-law, I will assess her. I will kind of profile her. So I will understand how she kind of wants to be approached, where she comes from, her values, how she's most comfortable. I'm actually doing this right now. My daughter has a boyfriend. They've been seeing each other for over a year. And I take it upon myself to get to know him, to get to know his family, to get to know their dynamic. And I've been able to pick up, okay, so these are going to be speed bumps potentially in their future if they stay together. And these would be roadblocks. And because I know that, then I would know how to support them best in terms of coming together as a family. And when I say that, I mean both sides. So if I start to feel her pull away or her kind of giving me the side eye or being a little snippy, I would definitely readjust my frequency of calling, readjust my cadence of being over there. I would definitely step back to make sure I didn't put any pressure on that unit. So if my son estranged from me and I was pretty sure it was because of my daughter-in-law, I would take a step back. I would retrieve the file of information I have in my head on her family, her values, her insecurities, all the things. You know, us moms are really good at collecting data points. And then based on what led to the estrangement, let's say she felt jealous of the attention my son was giving me, I would take a step back. I would put myself in her shoes. Let's say she didn't have a father figure, her mom worked all the time, and my son is the first opportunity that she actually feels seen and a priority. And so every time his attention goes to me, it's almost like she just loses sunlight. I would have so much empathy for that. So once I put myself in her shoes and I'm like, ooh, that's probably what she's feeling, I would step way back. And even if they're estranged from me, I would step way back. I would put myself in her shoes and then I would reflect that. I would say, hey guys, I realized I've been putting too much pressure on you guys. I've been demanding too much attention. I'm really sorry. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to give you guys lots of space to just flourish and build your life. I just want you to know I love you. I am going to send you a text here and there because I just can't help it because you're always on my mind. But just so you know, I'm ready to talk whenever you are. And again, I'm sorry for putting that extra pressure on you guys. And then I would start the I'm thinking of you text to both of them. I would let my daughter-in-law know how lucky I am to have her in my life, how blessed my son is to have her as a wife, how amazing she is as a person. I would sprinkle some not so serious fluffy stuff in there ooh, I know it's busy tax season if she's an accountant, just different things about her life. I would do that for both of them and just stay consistent, and hopefully at some point that door would crack. Advice is colored through the lens through which it's given, and that subjectivity can either illuminate or it can distort. As I share all of my insight, whether it's the 3-step reunification process in episode 10 and 12, or other tips and tricks, this is drawn from my personal experience and my decade of clinical practice. I urge you to filter the advice I give through your discerning filter. So when I advocate a framework, it's adaptable to the contours of your unique situation. And it's your job to figure out, how will this fit my family best? Recognizing this subjectivity is key. Whether it's research or frameworks, it's all sifted through my perspective, shaped by my biases and my experiences. It's imperative then that you become a discerning filter. Take in the advice, whether it's from a boundary enthusiast like myself or some book or some other guru you're paying attention to, and then apply it to the tapestry of your family. Understand one size fits all does not work with relational advice. There's so many complex layers with relationships that my advice doesn't work for everybody. No advice does. You are the one that has to season it to taste. It doesn't come ready to serve. Hopefully now you can see what colors my lens, my values, what's important to me, how I've raised or how my husband and I have raised our kids, why I am so convicted when I say I would keep reaching out. Like, you know now. It's because of the way we've parented, the way we've created autonomy, gave them space to be individuals, we've encouraged them to have a good, solid sense of self. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope this was helpful. I hope you now understand why I am so convicted when I say my first step in the 3-step reunification process is to get my son to crack the door. So if I was estranged from him, I would continue to reach out and I would never stop reaching out. And that promise is from knowing my son. It's from knowing how I've parented him. It's from knowing that I have encouraged a strong sense of self, autonomy, individuation, all the things minus addiction, mental illness, and an in-law. All the reasons why kids pull away and estrange, like part of the leading causes. So when I encourage keeping the line of communication open during the silence of an estrangement, it's coming from that. It's coming from a knowing, a maternal instinct, an understanding of human behavior. And again, I guess I'm tripling down now. I believe it's important for the parent to be actively trying to mend the fence. And I believe you get further when you first step back, really take inventory on like what work you could do in the interim, like while you're waiting for the reunification. And like take Brenda as an example. Could you imagine being her son getting that text? I mean, wow. His mom never stood on her own feet, always over-relied on him. And she went to therapy and figured out all this stuff about herself, how to like build out a bigger social circle so all her pressure and focus wasn't just on her son. Could you imagine the relief he got when he got that text? So no, he didn't want to go to therapy with her, but he definitely wanted to meet up for coffee. Until we meet again, make sure you keep minding your boundaries.